So what happens when one of these documents comes to us for translation? More often than not, these translations will go through our standard workflow, and that's translation and revision. So that's translation by a single translator and then revision by a second independent proofreader who checks it for accuracy, spelling, grammar, etc. And this can be done on the full document. So we have a full document to be translated, but we also very often work in the life sciences with tracked changes. So this is when we have an old version of a document that has already been translated, the translation has been approved, and now there is a new version of the document with a few changes entered into it, and those changes need to be translated. And this is particularly tricky as well because the linguists need to translate only those parts of the document that have been changed and enter them into the existing translation, but they still need to refer to the translation that has already been approved beforehand. So this is our most common workflow, I'd say in 90% of cases, if not more. And obviously I haven't listed all of the workflows that we have. That would take quite a long time, but I wanted to highlight two other workflows that we most commonly use in the life sciences. So one of them is machine translation post-editing. This is something that we recently became ISO certified for as well. And what this means is that a human translator works on translations that have been generated by a machine translation engine. Now, these are usually somewhat more complex machine translations than just your bog standard Google Translate. They're usually developed using multiple resources. And basically, the human translator will then go through this machine translation and work on it to bring it up to the level of a translation that a human being would produce. So for these two workflows, translation and revision and machine translation post-editing, we usually work in translation tools. Now, translation tools allow us to take a document, enter it into our tool, and break up every text into smaller segments. And what this allows us to do is to run analyses on that text, speed up our work, and do quality checks afterwards. And a very important thing about these tools to mention is that they also allow us to store past translations of similar documents in a format that is accessible and quick and easy to refer to. So we call these translation memories. And on the next slide, I'll show you a practical example of what this analysis actually looks like and what it means for the translation process. But before I do, I also just wanted to mention the third workflow that we very frequently use when it comes to the life sciences, which is revision or validation. So this is when a client has an existing text that's been translated. They already have the translation, but they need us to check the existing translation, check for accuracy, correct any grammatical errors, any spelling errors, and so forth. Now, in addition to these linguistic workflows, there's also a lot of technical, there are a few technical workflows that go on in the background, and our technical team carries out a vast variety of tasks, but today I wanted to highlight two. Because these are very often also used in the life sciences. So the first is the creation of bilingual documents. So this is when a client has a document in, for instance, English, and they would like us to translate the document, but to also create a bilingual document so that we have the source and the translation together in the same document. There are various ways of formatting this, obviously, but most commonly it's with the translation, with the source in one column and the translation in the other. And this also requires, obviously, a little bit of formatting and technical know-how in order to ensure that the source and the translation always line up and that the document, even if changes are entered into it later, still remains legible. And the second technical workflow that I wanted to mention is the conversion of PDF documents and images. So this is the conversion of uneditable documents into an editable format. We do this so that we can enter the text into our tools and eventually produce a translated document that is both editable and that mirrors the original as closely as possible.